Good morning, everyone. This is Robert Hubbell from today's edition newsletter. We are gathered again for our Saturday morning weekly dose of perspective. Thank you for joining me. I really enjoy these interactions with readers. I hope you do too, as well. Well, for the first time in about 6 or 8 months, I have a new worry, and that is that we might become complacent. The Republicans have had a very bad 6 weeks. Their polling just continues to trend downward on every issue, including their signature issue of immigration. They continue to commit crimes, engage in unlawful conduct, ongoing violations of the Constitution, and it is finally catching up to them. A significant part of it might be the economy. And if that's the case, well, that hurt Joe Biden as well. So, you know, things are going well for Democrats and Republicans who seek to return to the rule of law and for independence, for everyone who wants to defend the Constitution and preserve our democracy. But we cannot become complacent. We have done a great job with the protests, with highlighting issues, with maintaining party discipline for the most part in Congress. And the good news for our success is that we must do more of it. There's no part of anything that we have succeeded in doing that says that we can relent. They're not going to give up. Trump is not going to give up. In fact, as I review the events of the week, my God, they are doubling and tripling down on conduct that should shock the conscience of every American. So we should feel confident. We should feel good. We should take satisfaction from where we are almost 6 months in to this presidency. But boy, we certainly shouldn't be complacent. And I hope none of you feel like that. I can pretty much guarantee that none of you feel like that, but for those in your orbit, please don't let them let down their guards. We must fight as if our democracy depends on it, because it does. Um, so I thought I would review sort of the events of the week. And the through line really is that the Democrats are on the right side of the issues. They're on the right side of history. They have captured the momentum and the public sentiment. And Republicans are flailing. I mean, their party is engaged in internal fighting. There are messaging battles going on. Trump is weak and muddled, and I'm going to talk about that. But at the same time, they're doing things that are just grossly inhumane and unconstitutional. So, you know, I mean, time seems stretched and compressed. We started this week with Ukrainian peace talks, where the U.S. leaked a peace proposal that was drafted by Russia. It was a Russian wish list. And there we saw that Republicans began to push back on Trump and post that this was a Putin wish list, and that there wasn't support for that shape of peace in Ukraine among the Republican Party. So that was sort of the first hint this week of the internal dissension in the Republican Party. And then, you know, Twitter began to allow its users to see the country of origin of users on Twitter. And surprise, surprise, many of the leading MAGA accounts on Twitter are located in Eastern Europe, Africa, and Asia. They are not even American MAGA adherents. These are people who are sowing disinformation across America to a willing office. Um, and then on the same day that this Russian wish list was released, Trump released or leaked a proposal, a healthcare cost containment proposal, which was the Democratic proposal going into the shutdown. And, I think it just goes to show how defeated and out of ideas the Republican and MAGA caucus is, and of course, Mike Johnson and Republicans in the House threw up all over Trump's attempt to extend the ACA subsidies in exactly the same way that Democrats had proposed as a condition of ending the shutdown. And what that shows is we're right. Our ideas are right. We are where the American people are. Trump, in his feral, instinctual way, understands that the people are with us. And so that's just Monday that shows how kind of weak they are. And then on Tuesday, Mark Kelly, Alyssa Slotkin, and Representatives Houlihan, DeLuzio, Goodlander, and Crow released a wonderful video. I hope you've all watched it many times, in which they appealed to members of the armed services saying, you must not follow illegal orders. In fact, that's exactly what the Uniform Code of Military Justice says. That's what the Army Field Manual says. The Army Field Manual, which I quoted twice in this week's newsletter, says it is no defense to a court-martial to say that you were following an illegal order if you had reason to believe it was an illegal order. And my God, the attacks on, call them drug smugglers in international waters without due process, without trial, in violation of the Geneva Convention, in violation of the law of war, in violation of the U.S. Army's own rules of engagement. It's just lawless. We have a president who is ordering the killing of civilians, a secretary of defense who is ordering the killing of civilians, and roll forward to Friday and Saturday, when the Washington Post and others revealed that SOCOM, the Special Operations Unit, which is a unit that houses SEAL Team 6 and the Army Rangers and all of these other specialty units, SOCOM had destroyed a boat, and there were survivors who were clinging to wreckage in the water. And then someone in SOCOM, Field Team 6, I don't know, ordered a missile to kill those two non-combatants who were fighting for their lives in the open ocean. There is no way to talk about that except as premeditated murder. I mean, you look at the Uniform Code of Military Justice. It says that you cannot attack civilians. It says that if there are combatants who've been disabled, who are effectively out of action and are prisoners of war, you must rescue them and care for them. Instead, somebody in the chain of command from Admiral Bradley, who's the head of SOCOM, ordered that a Predator missile be sent against defenseless human beings fighting for their lives in international waters after the boat had been blown up. And that's why Mark Kelly and others made that video. And God bless them, because the U.S. military, I am sorry to say, some portions of it are engaged in absolutely lawless behavior that fits the definition of a war crime. And one detail that is sort of lost in all of this is that the area in which these attacks are taking place is known as the Southern Command of the U.S. military. And you would expect that the Southern Command would be running these operations. Well, they're not. These operations are not being run by the Southern Command, but they're being run by the Special Operations Unit, by SOCOM. I know this sounds in the weeds, but the point is, it appears that the Southern Command has washed its hands of this operation and said, we're not going to do this. And so somebody, Admiral Bradley, who was a member of Field Team 6, has apparently felt that it is okay to go ahead and to kill defenseless civilians clinging to wreckage in the middle of international waters, and that somehow is lawful. It is not. There will be a day of reckoning when Trump is gone for everyone in the military who engaged in this lawless activity. And Trump may pardon them all, but that doesn't mean that they can't be dishonorably discharged and their pensions affected and held accountable in some fashion for their illegal conduct. Um, we're only on Tuesday, and this is when Lindsay Halligan manages to get the cases against James Comey and Letitia James thrown out because she was not properly appointed as U.S. Attorney in the Eastern District. And I take some I don't know what the right word is, but Trump is running out, and he never really had competent people to do his bidding. So he has these incompetent people who don't even know how to secure an indictment, who aren't actually legally appointed to their position doing his bidding. And I'm hopeful that the courts will continue to serve as a bulwark for democracy in the way that they have. And God bless that judge who wrote that opinion. The next day, on Wednesday, the New York Times leads with a front page, column A1, huge feature article about how Trump is deteriorating physically and mentally. I mean, it was a major effort on their part. And as I said in the newsletter, much of what the Times posted was not new. They recounted everything that we already know. But what it did is it quantified how much Trump has cut back on public appearances, and it's something compared to his first term, and it's something like 40% from the first 11 months of his presidency. His meetings are shorter. They begin later in the day. There are fewer of them. And then Donna Jaffe sent me a note this morning asking me to comment on something that apparently Heather Cox Richardson talked about this morning. And that is that Trump's posts on Truth Social more and more do not appear to be written by Donald Trump. It appears as though they're being drafted by Stephen Miller or someone who is, a hateful human being who has an anti-immigrant philosophy. And how do we know they're not being written by Trump? They don't contain misspellings. They contain proper grammar. Sentences make logical sequences of thought, none of which Trump can do. So clearly, either Trump has ceded control of his Truth Social account or someone has taken control of the Truth Social account. And we don't know what it is, but it is more and more Trump stepping back from the presidency. He's tired. He's not up to the task. His party doesn't like the ideas that he is floating. They didn't like his peace meeting with Mamdani. And so he's more and more out of step. And as Americans are angry about the economy, what's next on his list? He wants to put grotesque gold-plated statues on the National Mall in the reflecting pool. Now, I don't know that those are the details. I know that the White House has floated the idea that he's going to remodel the reflecting pool on the National Mall, and the only thing that I can think of is that he's going to put Rococo-style gold-plated statues because that's what he does. And he will ruin the contemplative nature of the reflecting pool and the National Mall and the adjacent monuments like the beautiful Vietnam Memorial. And he's doing all of this while people are shocked by the price of turkey and bread and milk and eggs at Thanksgiving. On that same day that the New York Times posted that article about Trump's weakening physical and mental grasp, other sources reported that there are a number of GOP representatives who are lined up to resign, presumably on January 5th, 2026, which is the end of the first session of the 119th Congress. Now, if that happens, it's hypothetically conceivable that if enough of them resign, that for some period, Democrats will be able to elect the leader in the House. But that's only if enough people resign such that we're like at 213 versus 212. That would mean that there would be 8 or 9 or 10 vacancies, all of which would have special elections. And then depending on how those special elections turn out, the control of the House might seesaw back and forth. So while I know there is some talk about Democrats taking control of the House before the 2026 midterms. It's kind of more complicated and more fluid than that. We should hope that we can do that, but if you look at the math, it's very complicated. And as I think I said in the newsletter, we need 7 or 8 more resignations uh, so that we can control with just the vacancies. But that's not the point. The math isn't the point. The point is that is how weak the Republican Party is. And you can feel the confidence and just the surge of enthusiasm in the Democratic Party for the upcoming elections. I mean, I don't want to talk about the polls because they're so uniformly good for us. I'm worried that people will become complacent. But by all markers, including level of enthusiasm between Democratic versus Republican voters, we have reason to be confident. And what that should do is it should stiffen our backbones and make us want to go out and do more, not less. And then I just want to close with the Thanksgiving Eve shooting in Washington, D.C. I mean, it's just a tragedy. Our hearts go out to the families of of Sarah Beckworth, I believe is her name, and Mike, and I forget his last name, Sarah was killed and Mike was wounded. I mean, it's just they're there doing their duty, and a lone gunman who appears to be suffering from mental illness caused by PTSD from the Afghan war, where he was in a CIA-backed unit, um, killed them. And it's tragic and it's horrible, and no one should blame the National Guard or target them for what they are doing. Um, but what followed was just this convulsion of ugly anti-immigrant talk from Trump and from the right-wing media. I mean, my God, they're talking about mass demigration, which is what white supremacists, that's the language, of pre-war Germany, of, sending everyone back to their country of origin. As I wrote, we are a nation of immigrants. It's ridiculous to talk about sending everyone back to their country of origin. And more to the point, it's racist and xenophobic. When a young white male acts alone to kill people with an assault rifle, we don't blame all white Protestants. We don't say all of them, go home to England or to Germany or Italy or wherever you came. What we do is we acknowledge that guns are the problem and that mental health is the problem. So it's just absolutely awful. And the one thing I will say is, if immigrants, legal or illegal residents of the United States in your lives, I urge you to reach out to them and just to tell them that we see them, that we understand their fear and anxiety, that we will speak up for them, that we will protest for them, that we will do our best to take back control of the government so we can stop these insane immigration raids, so that we can frankly defund and eradicate ICE and CBP, which have become rogue agencies within the federal government. We need to let them know that we have their backs. Jill called some friends of ours this week and gave that message, and they were very, very touched. And I would recommend that everyone do that. So I have about 9 minutes left. I hope to take about 5 of them. Um, okay. So what about the threat of getting rid of the reflecting pool? I did address that. I hope that because we now know in advance what he plans to do, that we will be able to stop it, that we will be able to shame any corporations that will fund it, that we will be able to shame any architects that will persist. So I'm hopeful that we will stop it, but the guy engages in self-help, and Republicans don't do a darn thing. Two related items. Okay, what about the Hernandez pardon? And I wrote about that this morning. So Donald Trump pardoned the former president of Honduras, Arturo Hernandez, who was convicted and sentenced to 45 years in U.S. prison for effectively being an agent of the Sinaloa drug cartel and creating a drug superhighway into the United States. And so Trump is busy having the U.S. military kill people on boats smuggling drugs into the United States, allegedly. And yet he pardoned a man convicted by a U.S. jury for importing hundreds of millions of dollars of drugs into the United States that did untold damage to American citizens. It doesn't make any sense except for the fact that Trump is trying to promote the prospects of the National Honduras Party, which is a MAGA-like conservative party in Honduras. It is just absolutely disgusting, and it shocked everyone. I mean, the prosecutors, Republicans, everyone associated this with this, or who learned about it, was like, what in the world is he doing? And I think we need to take what happened there and turn it into, or to reinforce the notion that there are two standards of justice in the Trump administration. There is a standard of justice for the rich and corrupt, and then there's another standard of justice for anyone who's poor and who's accused of a crime, whether they're guilty or not. Do I think we will attack Venezuela? Yes, absolutely. I think that the White House continues to signal that Trump is going to engage in land attacks against cartels, drug cartels in Venezuela. As I pointed out in the newsletter, when one nation attacks another sovereign nation for the purpose of killing people in that sovereign nation, that is called a war. And that's the language that we need to use. And shame on any newspaper or media outlet that limits it to some sort of attack on cartels. No, we will be attacking, and we will be attacking a sovereign nation, whether we agree or disagree with how they run their internal affairs. Might be a legitimate cause for war, but that power belongs to Congress, not to Pete Hegseth, not to SEAL Team 6, not to rogue elements of the military. So I think we are in for a very dark period when we engage in war against Venezuela, which I expect, I thought it would have already happened, but the White House continues to release statements suggesting that it will happen soon. Okay. Do I think that a couple of other things? I've got 5 minutes. Do I think the Republicans will start to resign and give Dems the majority? I think we shouldn't count on that as a permanent change in power. That's my concluding thought on that. It might happen, but it would mean that not only would 8 or 10 additional seats have to go vacant, but then we would have to win all of those special elections in order to maintain, or we would have to win 50% plus one of those special elections in order to maintain the majority. That's a tall order. Think about having to win Marjorie Taylor Greene's district. I'm not saying it's impossible. We should absolutely try, but I think we also have to be realistic about that challenge. What do I think about what's going on with the Epstein files? Well, we're in the 30-day period for the Department of Justice to release the Epstein files. I expect they will do too little, too late. They will over-redact the files. I think at that point, Congress will need to begin to attempt to enforce the act. We will need to file lawsuits. I don't know who has standing to enforce the Epstein Files Transparency Act. I haven't looked at that, but I assume there will be some. But look, it's a lose proposition for Republicans. If they release everything, which I don't think they will, what we will find is that the most frequently named person in those files is Donald Trump. Whether he engaged in illegal conduct is a different question, but the most frequently named person will be Donald Trump. And if they don't release the files, if they redact Donald Trump's name every time just because he's the president, even though the act says you cannot do that, it will further damage the credibility of the Republicans on this topic. Um, so I think we have a fight ahead of us, but I think we need to keep up that fight. Who would have thought that we would have in a week gone from Trump trying to peel off people from the discharge petition to it passing in the House, it passing in the Senate, and Trump signing it, and the DOJ saying that they will comply with the act? We shouldn't give up hope, not for the survivors, not for the people who've tragically lost their lives or had their lives ruined because of Epstein and the rich and powerful men and women who aided and abetted Epstein. So it is not a political issue. It is an issue about the survivors. But we must also recognize that it has political ramifications. And it certainly, if there are prominent Democrats in those files, you know what Republicans will do with that information. We should do the same thing. So I come to the end of this week feeling very confident that things are going well for us. In fact, I worry just a little bit that people are going to say, okay, I can ease up. Absolutely not. We are here because we worked so hard to get here. Do not give up. We have the momentum. We have captured public sentiment. Everything that we're doing, we just need to keep doing only more of it with more people at a greater volume and a greater scale. You guys are doing a great job. Thank you for joining me on these Saturday morning meetings. I really take a lot of confidence myself from seeing all of you. God bless you. Enjoy the rest of the weekend. Take care, everyone, and I will talk to you tomorrow. Bye.